So, it's been a while. I haven't uploaded in more than a month. Mainly this is because I had exams, got sick, got more exams, and got sick again. Well, with that out of the way, this is PSF. In my opinion, one of the greatest fan games ever made. And why I also think PSF is a viable and great path for the 2D Mario games. Mainly because recently, they've been on a slump quality-wise in my opinion. To start, I'll discuss the state of 2D Mario games. In 1983, the infamous video game crash of 1983 happened. Yeah, I'm a fucking genius myself. It was a huge recession of the video games industry that left it basically dead. This was because of the oversaturation of consoles and games that were rushed and poorly done. A great example is Pac-Man on the Atari 2600. They first decided to publish 12 million copies of the game, which nowadays is still a huge number, but back then this was titanic. At a conceptual level, this made sense. This was Pac-Man, one of the most popular games of all time, and the most recognized video game character of all time. But there was one issue. There are only 10 million Atari 2600 sold, so Atari banked on one game, to make them a lot of console sales. So you'd think that they would handle the development of Pac-Man, which is supposed to make a boom on their console sales, with love and care. Well, they fucked that up too! Todd Fry, the person tasked in making the port of Pac-Man, approached Atari with a prototype of the game, but the deadline of holiday 1981 was reeling in closer, so instead of delaying the game to improve Pac-Man, they decided to release the prototype. This is some Fallout 76 type shit. Comparing the Atari version to the arcade version is just night and day. So would you believe my words when I say this game failed critically? Yeah, it failed. Since the game barely appeared like the arcade version, people were upset and requested refunds of the game. And don't get me started on E.T. Oh god, don't get me started on E.T. With the reasons listed above, the saturation of consoles and games, the dwindling reputation of the video game industry, and the overall lack of information led to the video game crash of 1983. But after 2 years of video games being in a dark age, in 1985, a company from a faraway place almost single-handedly revived the video game industry. This company, of course, is Nintendo. When the Nintendo Entertainment System, also known as the NES, was being planned to be released to the US market, Nintendo was aware of the video game industry's errors from the past, so they decided to market the NES as a toy, packaged with 2 games, Duck Hunt and Super Mario Bros. And today, we'll be focusing on Mario. Super Mario Bros. What can I say? It revolutionized the industry and the side-scrolling genre. While it hasn't aged perfectly, it doesn't matter, as it provided a formula that the franchise would master and eventually overuse. Super Mario Bros. Sold extremely well. In fact, it's the best-selling Mario game of all time, with 40.24 million copies sold. This game sent both Japan and America into a frenzy of Mario Mania. In other terms, people were waiting for the next Mario game like the next coming of Christ. And in 1986, 8 months after Super Mario Bros. Was released, Japan, and only Japan, got the sequel to Super Mario Bros. And that game is called Super Mario Bros. 2, or Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels is definitely flawed. It's a game that prioritized making the original game harder. While on paper, it's not a bad decision, difficulty was enlarged by increasing the bullshit of the game through weird level gimmicks, such as this level, which makes you jump over springs, with a bottomless pit, with annoying wind effects, and by jumping on the spring, you can't even see Mario, making landing on the platform near impossible. Another example is to unlock the special worlds, you'll have to beat the game 8 consecutive times. That is a terrible way of stretching game time, but even with all the negatives of the game, it introduced multiple things that impact the Mario game to this day, the biggest being Luigi, his signature high jump and slippery feet. As you might have heard, I clarified that this game only released in Japan. This was because someone in Nintendo of America, specifically Howard Phillips, tested the game and found it too hard for the American audience. So Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels were never released until 1993 in the collection Super Mario All-Stars. But the American audience wanted their fill in the Mario action, so Nintendo decided to reskin Doki Doki Panic, a game which was made for the Dream Factory, an event that took place between July and August 1987 in Tokyo and Osaka. Super Mario Bros. 2, or Super Mario USA in Japan, was born by Nintendo reskinning Doki Doki Panic into something that fits the Mario universe. The four main characters were also changed into Mario, Luigi, Toad, and Princess Peach. The feature where you can play different characters per stage changed the basics of the game. For example, having a hard time using Mario, then maybe using Luigi will make it easier using his higher jump, or Toad with his superior speed and strength, or Princess Peach with her ability to float for a couple of seconds. These abilities that differentiate the characters add a layer of strategy and replayability to the game. These abilities also became the signature abilities of the same characters in Super Mario 3D World. From the previous three games, we see the advancements they made towards the franchise, advancements that had an undeniable impact on the future games to come, additions like the formula given by Super Mario Bros. And Luigi and the other characters added in the sequels. Well, this game is what I consider to be the 2D Mario franchise's magnum opus, the game that perfected the formula for the future games to come, and that game is of course Super Mario Bros. 3. Super Mario Bros. 3 was released during the peak of Mario Mania, a time when Nintendo was on top and no one could challenge them. This is the game that perfected the formula, a game with the world adding little bits of world building, with just the aesthetics of a stage play. It seemed like this masterpiece was released as if it was just one play by Nintendo. Other companies tried fighting back, but Nintendo continued their dominance by releasing Super Mario World, the game that ironed out almost all the small issues in Super Mario Bros. 3, making it one of the greatest games of all time, and personally, my favorite 2D Mario game of all time. And the Mario Land series being the first on handhelds, and the game to add Wario. Time after 1989, Mario's 2D dominance was in full force as everyone else just watched in awe as the company was working at its max efficiency, making masterpiece after masterpiece. But as the 16-bit era came to a close, it seemed 2D Mario disappeared. It was replaced by the 3D games, and we got some 2D action by the release of the Advance series. But these games were just re-releases of the previous games. It seemed like the transition into 3D killed the 2D games. Other franchises also jumped into 3D and remarkably failed, but Mario succeeded. I guess at this point Nintendo perceived 3D to be superior to 2D. But everyone could only wonder what could have been if Nintendo continued making 2D Mario games. And 12 years later, we got our answer.
All of those innovations changed games, and so will Nintendo DS. It is different. I want you to know that Nintendo is working on our next system, and that system will create a gaming revolution.
E3 2004, the year one little device was unveiled to the world, the Nintendo DS, a device which was the successor to the GBA, a handheld that had the power to run 3D games. It's also the same handheld that ironically gave a chance for the banished franchise to return. New Super Mario Bros. Was an explosion at the time, considered to be a modern classic, a return to the formula that was cut short after the 16-bit era. But something felt different in this game. The previous games had a set of innovations that moved the franchise forward. The only game where you could argue that it didn't do much to innovate was Super Mario World, but at least the game had innovative environments that added world building to the Mushroom Kingdom. Areas like the Forest of Illusion is a great example of that. In New Soup, the game just took the most used worlds from the previous Mario games and then didn't bother to add much to change the status quo. Let me be clear that the tropes in these games are okay, but the problem is that when you only use tropes, the game will start to feel unexceptional and bland. Just like most Mario games, there are still good bits here. The game uses a distinctly different art style, easily distinguishable from the previous games, and the game is still fun to play. New Super Mario Bros., although not as good as the previous games, at the very least revived the franchise on handhelds. But it won't be long before 2D Mario games return to their original home, with New Super Mario Bros. Wii. This game was even blander than the last one. All about what I said towards New Super Mario Bros. All apply, and the criticisms I gave still stand, and the compliments I gave are dashed. This is mainly because the level design of the main game got even more bland, and the graphics felt so unimpressive. Mario games are never the most beautiful games, but at the time of their games' releases, they did their best to be beautiful and cutting edge, and always taking advantage of the system's hardware, creating some really awesome visuals, especially for the time that it was released. New Super Mario Bros. Wii wasn't even rock bottom in 2012. We got two New Super Mario Bros. Games, two new games that made me lose my hope in the 2D franchise. Both games barely did anything to be different from any other New Super Mario Bros. Game. They tried to freshen up the gameplay by adding gimmicks and characters that had half the thought of the gimmicks in the classics. For example, in New Super Mario Bros. 2, they made coin collecting the main gimmick of the game. It's a good idea, but they don't do much with it. Collecting coins till you feel numb, never making it as satisfying as any other collectathon. And in New Super Mario Bros. U, the game added Baby Yoshis, a good concept on paper, but they never made levels where they are used to make it more interesting. Specifically the blue and pink Baby Yoshis, those would have made it for interesting level design. But they did nothing to it. The deluxe version also adds Nabbit, a cool small little add-on for bonus power-ups, but a terrible playable character, removing the properly placed platforming challenges, making the game equivalent to watching paint dry. These games to me felt like white noise compared to the festival that was the classic games. The New Soup games were too samey, and the fact that they kept the same art style kind of showed me that they just fell asleep on the wheel and drove the 2D franchise into mediocrity. Overall, the problem was a lack of experimentation in the formula. They stuck too close to it. When a customer always gets the same product time and time again, eventually they'll lose interest, mainly because of the lack of spicing things up into something more interesting. This is why I think Nintendo should start looking to the fans. Unlike a soulless company, the fans are full of passion when it comes to making projects, which is why it's so frustrating when Nintendo takes down the work of fans, when all they do is support a product more than they take from it. Project M, same as AM2R, Pokemon Uranium, and a lot more examples were struck down, products that held the community together. But this topic is for another video. What I want to focus on is a fan game made by a creator called Random Nick. The fan game he made called Super Mario Power Star Frenzy, and this is a fan game that soars higher than any of the New Super Mario games ever could. PSF originally began life using a different name, Super Mario Madness New Beginnings, or SMM for short. The game is described as, quote-unquote, my first ever fan game called Super Mario Madness New Beginnings. This is what PSF used to be. This game definitely has the signs of someone's first game. Wonky hitboxes and huge sprites are all over. but it also shows the potential the future updates will later perfect. The shop is a good example of something incomplete getting completed in the future. The graphics are also something that's its potential was completed in the final game. SMM still followed the normal 2D Mario style, from going from point A to B, but in random next future updates of the game, he decided to change it up. In 2014, the first of the Legacy Archives, which basically turned SMM and decided to make fundamental changes that made the game's concept based on the previous 2D games and turned it into a mixture of 2D and 3D. The first of the Legacy Archives is fundamentally different from the original 2D games. Instead, its structure is being more open-ended and exploratory. It's closer to the 3D games than the 2D games. The objective is also entirely different. Instead of being a classic point A to point B, which isn't bad, but like what I stated earlier, it has lacked the shake-up it desperately needed. So instead, in SMM, you have to find power stars, much like the 3D games. This makes the game feel as accessible as the 2D games, while being a stepping stone to enter the 3D games. In the future demos, Nick decided to expand on what worked from the previous demos. He changed the game's name from SMM to PSF. The world got bigger, the graphics are also better, janky hitboxes are no more. In general, there are more things to do, and in January 2019, Random Nick posted the Supernova demo of PSF, his biggest one yet, and it's what I want to focus on, as it's where the potential of this formula was fully met. I'll get into why that is later. First, the game opens up with you on the tutorial level. They sadly dropped the opening cutscene, but that's okay, because the story is really basic anyway. Mario and Luigi gather stars to fight Bowser. I'm sure you've heard of it before. The tutorial level is a really good level at teaching the basics of the game. Wall jumping, ground pound jumps. It also takes the P-speed mechanic from Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World. All of the movements feel really nice and fluid. It feels like a hybrid of Super Mario World and Super Mario Bros. 3. Also, as seen on the screen, the game looks really fucking nice. It looks like a natural evolution from Super Mario World. The enemies look really nice and fits to the world really seamlessly. And a mix of pixel art and great lighting can lead to a really great looking game. After using the exit pipe, you get booted to the world. The movement is more restricted compared to the older updates, but I don't find it an issue, mainly because it looks so much more presentable now than back then. Nearby is the Toad level. That is a level where you can buy stars using star coins you find inside the main levels. This is a really good way of adding purpose to the star coins in my opinion. After using the pipe, you get moved to the main levels of the game, and wow, they are fucking great.
And now for my next number, I'd like to return to the classics.
First is Waterfall Walkway, a really cool level. Great beginning, and it shows the basics in a smooth and natural way. I feel like this stage eases the player to the movement even more than the tutorial level, because this time, you have to practice caution because of the enemies. The star missions here are great. I particularly love the mission for the second star. The map looks so nice when it's dark. Next is Mushroom Mountain. It's also a great level, but I have problems with the bouncy mushroom. It feels so finicky. Like it's a 50-50 chance for me to make the jump, and I think it's because of the horizontal movement in midair is so slow. But the star challenges are really fun, with 2 great race levels. I also love how levels are well used as set pieces. This level is a great example, because there's a star here that you climb to the sky to grab, which I thought just fits really well in the level. The sky looks really nice as well. After that is Drop Cavern. It's kind of confusing, but I warmed up to it after the second star. The level sometimes feels a little too dark, definitely an above average level. Otherwise, there's not much to say here. After that is Yoshi Forest. It has a slight jump in difficulty, possibly the slowest level in the game because of the large uproots and the piranha walls that shoot out mini piranha plants. But to kill it, you need to whack it with a vegetable. You can only fight it by digging up, which is fine, but you have to dodge mini piranha plants, making you have to be careful, which isn't bad, but it's such a pace breaker. As just a couple seconds ago, I was speeding ahead. Although there is a key here, definitely a reference to Super Mario World. I really like this as it rewards your exploration, similar to the stars in the game. After Yoshi Forest is Bullet Bridge. This is the level you unlock by finding the key in Yoshi's Forest. This is also the level where you can get the propeller suit. My biggest problem with this level is that it sadly only has 1 star instead of the normal 5, which really sucks as this level looks so good, but I'm a total sucker for the sunset and its color palette, so I love that it's here. After traveling a little bit on the map, we enter Radiant Reefs, and it has a very psychedelic feel. I really like it. It's probably one of the better areas. It has great levels, taking advantage of the gold flower, which is basically the Super Ball in Super Mario Land, and it looks great. And it uses visibility in a really interesting way, leading to really interesting and even maybe trippy looks. And it has broken ships and corals, which I think is pretty cool. The final level of the game is Mashing Meadows. It's easily the hardest level, mainly because of the whole game teaching you to take your time. But here, you have to go all out on this level. Completing it is really fun and satisfying though. And the crushing wall, it gets pretty scary at times, I gotta admit. Those are most of the levels I played in the game. There are some that I didn't include, like this palace mainly because I didn't know where to place it. It's pretty good. Anyways, I love the presentation and the powers in this game. I love the music in this game. It's a rendition of the old tracks with new tracks. The game also has awesome graphics and lighting. Mario pops out so well, and there's a different title screen every time you boot up the game. The little things add up here, and that makes my heart warm, especially with the power-ups of the game, which are great. The power-up system is a mixture of Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World. I can pick what power-up to use before the level, like in Super Mario Bros. 3, and if I'm inside the level, when I'm stuck in a pickle, I can use the backup, like in Super Mario World. Levels now have less power-ups than the normal 2D offerings, but I think this was supposed to encourage the player to use the shop, where you can buy power-ups for coins, which is awesome. And the power-ups in the game are no slouch either. There's the forever reliable mushroom, which now heals Mario if he's not at 3 HP. The fire flower, which shoots fireballs. The ice flower that freezes enemies into blocks. The tanuki suit, which gives flight if enough speed is reached, and it slows down your descent. The laser flower, which shoots a motherfucking laser and kills opponents quite easily. The Voltrum, which shoots a huge blast of electricity and it comes back to you. It's basically a fucking nuke in the game, so use it as much as you want to. The propeller mushroom, which is similar to the tanuki suit, but it greatly increases your vertical height in exchange for horizontal speed. And the rainbow star, that fucks shit up for about 20 seconds. After that, it just wears off. The power-ups of this game are very fun and dynamic, and the presentation, which can be stunning and beautiful, includes the already great gameplay loop. About the gameplay loop in this game is great. I cannot harp enough about this game's movement, it's so well done. Although, there are times where I just seemingly clip out of existence, but luckily it doesn't occur too often. The game's difficulty also isn't easy. There are some stars where your brain is challenged, although not by much. And in general, the challenges are great. They're varied and make sense in the level. They fit in. For example, a star inside an abandoned ship naturally fits with Radiant Reefs. Some levels also have Chaos Crystals, which, when enough is collected, makes you a Shadow Mario in some maps. This is awesome, as it rewards your exploration and curiosity, and it also tests your skills in platforming. And inside the levels are purple room challenges, like in Super Mario 3D World, although they only give coins, not stars. After finishing a level, the game gives you a rank, which I assume is based on the points you get, and I really like this tiny addition. It makes me want to run through the level again just to get a higher score. Overall, this game has amazing gameplay, power-ups, and presentation. PSF overall is a refreshing and amazing game that, in my opinion, is a great path for the 2D franchise to take. Although, sadly, I did say that this was where the specific formula was fully met, mainly because this was the final update of the game. We did get the Legendary Star Archives later in the year, but it's mainly a collection of a bunch of beta content that didn't make it into the final game from the Legacy version, which had Wario and Waluigi, more levels, more game modes. It's pretty sad that the game had to be left, even though it had more ideas that would have made the game even better. But not everyone has moved on to greener pastures. Random Nick is now in the process of making his own game, which I implore you to support it, because I think it also has a lot of potential. There has since been no new, or not a re-release, 2D Mario game in 9 years, and I don't think there's a new attempt coming up soon, as New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe is selling really well on the Switch. It has been 3 months of me. Well, actually more than that. It's been 5 months! Okay, I gotta start uploading again. It's been 5 months of me just here, staring at the pieces of this broken puzzle. And all I've learned is that Nintendo drove the 2D franchise into the ground, and the fans had to pick up the slack. And they're doing a better job than Nintendo has in the past 21 years. And most of all, is that I think I just care too much. Not retiring anytime soon. Sorry for the long gaps in the videos. I got really busy, and I don't know. YouTube kind of took a back seat. I plan on making shorter videos, as this is a bit too ambitious for my skill level, and I hope you enjoyed it.